Hi, I'm Yegi. I'm an entrepreneur and success coach who wants it all. Family, luxury, career, and the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And I'll do whatever it takes to get there. I created the Yegi Project to document my journey and inspire others to do the same. My mission is to change the world by influencing and leading others to do what they love and live fulfilled lives. Hello. Welcome back to the Yegi Project. Today's honored guest is Adam Goldman, who is the nation's top franchise coach and consultant. During his 20-year career as a business investor and a franchise consultant, Adam has founded 3 successful companies in 2 different continents. These include an IT company in Poland and a real estate investment company in Texas. Most recently, he grew the Vanguard Cleaning Area developer concept into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, generating 30 franchisees, which I'm very curious to pick his brain about, and 300 customers, which he has now sold. On top of all the business success, Adam is a father of 3 and has also published a book called The Franchisee Lifestyle. Welcome, Adam. In your own words, please reintroduce yourself and tell us, who are you and what do you do?
So, Yegi, what I would say is, and look, I have a lot of candidates of mine that peg themselves this way. I've always been a corporate misfit. When I was at UC Berkeley at Haas School of Business, everyone else was really excited about their McKinsey job, or wherever that might be, or a job at Intel, or even Cisco Networks back in the day. I'm aging myself. But I've always been someone that just really never wanted to work for anyone else. Always had this excitement of building things on my own and scaling them. And what my current career is really exciting is I get to help people that maybe weren't necessarily entrepreneurial types, that kind of scared to be entrepreneurs. And in the whole franchising world, which has kind of been my life now for the past 14 years, first as a master franchisor and a franchisee, and now as a franchise coach for these past 7.5 years, is to kind of make these things happen.
So take us back a little bit. How did you get started? So you're in college, deep down, you know you want to do your own thing to fulfill your own dreams. Did you have family and other people that were entrepreneurs? Or how did you even get started in the field of entrepreneurship? Were you studying business in Berkeley? Take us back.
Well, let's go even farther, right? So, I mean, so my dad, loved my dad, right? And he was always kind of a corporate refugee as well, but never really had the right route or path just to kind of make his own way. He came home tired every day, and I remember him sleeping on his rocking chair because his life in corporate America kind of sucked the life out of him. Someone whose parents were encouraging when it came to entrepreneurial ventures, things such as a paperboy, or also other things like driveway sealing business or baseball card investing at different conventions or things of that sort. And just kind of looking back on that, even at undergrad, grad school, MBA was at Berkeley, but undergrad, a very fascinating situation happened. Kind of stumbled into an internship where I had my fraternity brothers and I go ahead and market credit cards in exchange for 2 liters of Mountain Dew. And you'd be surprised how much information college students will give up for Mountain Dew.
You know, it's interesting when you really look back, even from childhood, you can pick up little skills and little things that you did that is so obvious today that, hey, I had this entrepreneurial thing in me from when I was a kid. Now, when did you realize that, okay, this is the area of entrepreneurship I want to focus on, the franchising? How did that happen?
So I just kind of stumbled into it. So I bought a bunch of property after the last Great Recession in 2008. But what I found, rather be lucky than smart, right? It just seemed like I kind of stumbled into investing after the market crashed. So just kind of found my portfolio opportunities kind of dwindling. A lot of big money was coming into residential real estate in Houston and Texas in general, and talked to a friend who connected me to a consultant. And I looked at a few different things in franchising and kind of resonated. I liked the idea of having training wheels or having a support or a system behind a business because, frankly, I'm quite good at following system, but I'm not as good at creating it from scratch.
I see. Okay, so let's dive right into franchising. But before that, actually, let me ask a couple of fun icebreaker questions so our audience could get to know you a little bit better. Now, what is one thing that most people don't know about you?
That is a great question. Let's see. I would say one thing that people don't know about me is and I'm not afraid to admit it, I absolutely love, I cherish some downtime, and I'm just kind of obsessed with jigsaw puzzles.
Oh, interesting.
It's just kind of a way to kind of use the other side of my brain. And I find that whenever I do that, it's a really good thing for me.
Is it therapeutic?
Yes, very therapeutic.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to pick a random table topic question from my deck of cards. Now, this one is, which piece of land would you preserve forever? Is there a land like that for you?
Piece of land.
In the world.
Interesting. In the world. Wow. That's fascinating. It's a great question. I gotta say, Udaipur in Rajasthan in India, just a
Why?
phenomenal magical place. There's actually there's like a palace that's on an island, and it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen.
Wow, I've never heard of it. I'm going to have to look it up afterwards. Awesome. Now, if you had a magic wand, what's one thing you would change? It could be anything. Don't overthink it. First thing that comes to mind.
If I could change anything, it would be lessening irrational fear that people have. And it's not only in business, but in other things as well. I just think that if you look at life in general, when it comes to traveling or doing things in general, people tend to overthink things. And if there was some way to kind of make people be less risk averse, I think the world would be a better place.
Wow, yes, I actually just did an episode about fear, and I'm curious to pick your brain about it because that's one main thing that does hold people back. And our audience are entrepreneurs who are looking to either expand their business or really quit their 9 to 5 and only be entrepreneurs. What would you say would be the top 3 things to overcome a fear? So just kind of general guideline or anything that you do. Let's say a situation presented itself for business or personal life, and you have this instinct that your first instinct is fear. I'm afraid to do this thing. What do you do? What do you tell yourself? What actions do you take? What advice do you have for our audience?
So look, I remember one of the biggest fears of my life. It's 11:55 at night, right?
Okay.
And in 5 minutes, I'm signing this franchise agreement and I'm terrified, right? This is irrational, but it's there, right?
Was this your first franchise?
Yes. So look, I mean, what I would say is I really think that it's important for people to, number one, acknowledge the fear. It's okay. I think a lot of people haven't even gotten to that first step. You just kind of have to acknowledge that it exists. So the first one is admit, yes, I am nervous, or yes, I'm scared, right? Just kind of look it in the eyes and say it. Look, my candidates deal with this on a regular basis, right? And then the second part of it is to just kind of ask yourself if this is rational or not. And third thing is kind of give yourself permission to kind of be fearful of things, because I think it just means that you're in the moment and that's okay, right? I think that if I'm not doing something that's out of my comfort zone, I'm really not growing as a person.
I see. So feel the fear, acknowledge it, but push through it. Use your judgment, still push through it and go through with it. Don't let it hold you back.
Absolutely not.
And we're all afraid at some point. It's normal.
Yes.
All right. So going back to our questions, what does your typical day look like today?
So great question. My day these days is just so candidate specific, right? I'm looking at today, it's just kind of been booked solid between 8 and 5, which is awesome. And I'm able to help so many people. I found that there's a lot, especially since the pandemic, people are just really excited about franchise brands. And a lot of it is not particularly, frankly, glamorous, right? A lot of just connecting with people many times through Zoom and kind of getting to know them and making connections between them and franchisors. But I'd also say there's a component which allows me to take care of self-care as well. So I'm training for a half marathon, which I haven't done in 5 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so, talk about fear. I'm not as young as I used to be, right? So it's kind of fearful to kind of get out there again and training again. But that's also a really important part of my day to have things like that allow me either working out or things of that sort.
Is there a reason why you set that goal for yourself to do the half the marathon this time around? Does it mean anything or just for fitness?
I think it was more on gut. I've been doing running just kind of for fun. My trainer is actually an Olympian in track and field, and he's been very motivational for me. And just kind of, I like to push myself. And I thought, wait a second here. It's been 5 years. Let's see how this goes right now. I had some time.
Yeah, good
And
challenge.
yeah.
Good challenge to get you to the next thing. You know, I always say we got to try new things and challenge ourselves to grow. So that's kind of what I see that's happening. You're challenging yourself. I love it.
Are you a runner?
I love running. I am also afraid to fully get back into running after kids. I have three young kids and I had them very back to back and I had complications. So I wasn't allowed to run in my pregnancies and right after. Now I'm good. I've done physical therapy. I am allowed to run. I just need to get back up there, but I have this fear. But I'm slowly, started off with yoga. So once I feel strong enough again, I'm gonna get into the more long distance running.
Great.
Yeah. So let's dive right into the franchising. It came up already a few times. You picked this area to focus. We already discovered that the first agreement you signed was pretty scary. So take us through your thoughts, your research. How did you decide what franchise did you pick? How did you decide that was the right franchise for you? And what were the emotions behind it as a first time franchise buyer?
So Yegi, I mean, what I would say is that it was a really rough time personally when I first bought my franchise. So a couple months, just lots going on personally. So it was a really tough time in general. So I literally had to deal with these personal challenges and start this business from scratch, which was really interesting. Now, I was able to plow through this when I had more time and was able to focus on the business. What I would tell you is that I picked this one because my coach gave me three options. This was the one that really talked to me or resonated with me. I was excited about finding different buildings for my franchisees to clean, and also finding these actual franchisees, kind of being a middle person, right, or broker. Just really enjoyed the fact that I was making a huge difference in these people's lives as well, meaning I had people that were putting kids through college, and it was really scalable as well. It was a fascinating experience to be a part of.
Now, you wrote a book about the franchisee lifestyle. Can you give us the top 5 takeaways from the book? So if somebody wants to pick it up or wants to get the 5 key lessons that you cover in there, what are those 5 key things that you want them to know?
Okay, so first one is that number one, franchises. I'm going to talk about misconceptions of franchises, right, and dispel them. So first one is that they're only McDonald's and French fries, right? And that's not true. I have 75 industries that I connect my investors with. Second fact would be some people think that you need to be full-time in a franchise business. And my answer is no way. You don't need to be full-time. There's nothing that's absentee, but there are plenty of brands that are semi-absentee, meaning you could have managers that are running the business and you can do it part-time and keep your day job.
I'm so sorry to cut you off. So
Okay.
about how much time would you say minimum somebody needs to spend in a franchise? So they want to buy a franchise as an investment, but they're really busy. How much time would you say they would need to put in a franchise business as an investment?
So the most successful franchises have husband and wife teams that might be able to, or partners or spouses that run it together, at least 5 to 10 hours a week. So people come to me and say, I only have 2 hours a week to run this. That's too few hours.
Yeah. 5 to 10 a week seems reasonable, even for
Yep.
the busiest person. I mean, anything you invest in, you do want to give it some of your time, right? It's
Absolutely.
Five.
And look, I mean, it could be very time intensive at the very beginning, but kind of maybe after 5 or 6 months, not as intensive. So everything changes. So yes, that's the second one that I would say. So number one is the fact that more than just food. Number 2, semi-absentee ownership. Number 3, how expensive franchises are. I have a lot of people that come to me and they say, I heard that franchises are millions of dollars. I'm really worried about that. And I say to them, look, I have brands that are over $1 million. McDonald's is over $1 million plus, but there are plenty of great brands that are probably service businesses that could be really attractive that are under $200,000 all in. Right. So I think that would be the third one. And I think the fourth one is that you got to spend a lot of money to make a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a great one because we all believe that until we really look into it and be like, no, you can start small.
Yes. So some of the most amazing franchise brands are ones that are, how would I put it? That you start small. I have a friend in Houston that started his service company with one truck and he built it into an 8-figure business. So that's certainly a possibility. And I think that the last one, the fifth one is that you kind of need to have experience in order to do what you want to do, right? So I've had people come to me and kind of the default, they've been in an industry all their life. And they say, Adam, I really want a pharmaceutical related franchise or something like that. But the thing that they don't understand, what's actually exciting about the franchising world is that it's actually a positive if you don't know the business already. You need to have general business skills, but they want to teach you how to do it their way. So if you're investing in a business and you don't have any experience, that's actually a positive as long as you're a good business person.
Now, what are the pros and cons between buying a franchise as a business or starting your own business out of scratch, so like a startup?
So look, I would say that not everyone is an entrepreneur, the kind of person that can start something from scratch, right? It takes a special skill set. In fact, a guy by the name of Gerber wrote a book called The E-Myth, in which he said that whenever someone is starting their business on their own, they're wearing many different hats. And if you don't have the right sort of process, then you can find yourself doing accounting and doing other things as well. And maybe it's not really the best use of your time because you don't have that system or process. Maybe your satisfaction isn't very high. So I would say for the right franchise brand, my candidates have told me, they said, look, Adam, I'm so grateful to you because you've saved me all this money and all these mistakes that I otherwise would have made. Now that comes at a cost of paying royalty fees and franchise fees, but for the right concept and the right person, it can be a really, really good match.
Can you break down a little bit for the listener who doesn't know much about franchising? So if I were to buy a franchise, we already debunked that, okay, you don't need $1 million. You can have about maybe 200,000 to buy a franchise. But what other fees and royalties come with the general setup of a franchise? And I understand it could vary, but can you educate us a little bit more on that area?
Absolutely. And so 2K, by the way, that would be a total portion. Many of my candidates either use their 401k without any penalty, or they actually get loans, SBA loans, etc., in order to pay for a franchise. So what I would say is this, that when you're investing in a franchise brand, you pay a franchise fee. And this is kind of like the fee to get the IP or the secret sauce or the actual process from the franchise brand. It's an initial fee to get into the system. And that can be anywhere from $50,000 and up, depending on how many territories you invest in. And on an ongoing basis, the way that the franchise model works is you're paying royalties. Typically, it's a percentage of revenue going forward for the franchise brand. And what I tell people is when they kind of look at these royalty fees and they kind of get spooked, the idea is not how much money you're paying someone else, but how much money you have in your pocket. And if they're adding value for the amount that you're paying.
And the franchisor still is the one who's doing the marketing, the brochures, all that stuff, or does that vary between each company? How much responsibility are you taking on as a franchisee?
So great question. Look, there are two sides for this. The first side is where people think, hey, I'm going to buy this franchise brand. I'm going to get everything from the franchise brand. They're going to give me, it's going to be like mailbox money, right? I'm going to go to my mailbox, pick all this money. The flip side of that is some people think, hey, what's going to happen is the franchise brand is going to do nothing at all, right? And the reality is somewhere in between those two extremes, right? So you're going to get a system or a process, and they're going to help you, and they might even give you marketing material, right? But it's actually your company, and you're getting these processes and systems and this brand name in exchange for royalty fees and franchise fees.
I see. And that's why having systems in place for a regular business, it's so important.
Absolutely.
Because that's how we could scale, right? But that's a whole other topic.
Absolutely.
Now, let's go back to some of the questions that people might be curious about franchises. So, initially, I think we don't know much about it. It's not talked about as much. I think people are either like dreamers of wanting to start their own business or they just work for a company. Franchising, I feel like it kind of falls in the middle of, okay, people who have a lot of money and need something to invest in. But I'm glad we're talking about it to debunk that. And also, to know how much money can somebody make in a franchise since they are paying all these fees. How, on average, how many years can it take for them to get return on their investment? And I'm sure
That's
it's going to vary. But
exactly. So I get asked this all the time. How much money am I going to make? And my answer is, if you're a bad operator, you're not just like any business. You're not going to make any
I was
money at
very
all, right? Exactly, exactly. But like, look, very successful franchise operators can make a lot of money, especially if they've scaled it somehow, right? I have a friend that owns 25 salon suites in Houston and throughout Texas. I mean, that's a scalable business. I have other friends that own multiple units of different brands. And look, I mean, some of these brands that aren't very glamorous, things that are in businesses that are kind of dirty, right? Like air conditioning, huge need, right? Not the world's most glamorous when it comes to cocktail conversation, but it could be a very scalable business and profitable as well. The thing that I ask my candidates to look at is to kind of understand how they can scale this business and how it looks if it's scaled.
now, if when you're investing or connecting a buyer to a franchise company, do they give you some sort of breakdown? Obviously, you can look at their books and the reporting to see their profits and all that before you purchase, but is there any sort of guarantee? I guess, yes. Is there any sort of, I mean, is there any sort of guarantee to not be as afraid to invest your money in a franchise?
So there are no absolute guarantees, right? The only two guarantees that we have in life are death and taxes, right? But what I can tell you is this, that there are ways to mitigate your risk. And probably the best way to do that, now the franchise brand does give you a disclosure document that has earnings claims and also has a range of investment levels. But even more important than that is to talk to existing franchisees, people that are already in the system that might be in a market like yours, and see what they have to say, right? Because every brand is going to have high performers and average performers. Find a brand with people like you in a market like yours that are overperforming and use that as a way to kind of validate.
If I'm shopping for a franchise to purchase or invest in, how do I find the one that's the right fit for me? Do you take us through that process, or how does that work?
That's a great question, and that's what my business is, right? There are so many options out there. It's so hard to find out, and I actually believe that people are searching for franchises in the wrong way. And what I mean by that is that they kind of, maybe they were driving or they saw some sort of ad. They're like, wow, I should go ahead and look at this business. I think it'd be a great thing. But kind of the analogy is when you look under the hood, like a car, if you dig right in, you probably shouldn't have even started looking at this one to begin with, because you were looking for things that have, I don't know, maybe semi-absentee ownership and small employee headcount that are blue collar or white collar. And you could have known that from the very beginning, but you spend months on this brand and it probably wasn't the right one to kind of figure out at the beginning. So I'm here to kind of narrow down for my candidates their search to 3 brands that really are cultural and a characteristic fit for them to begin with, so they can really dig deep into ones that are already pre-screened.
Now, how much control does the franchisor have over the franchisee with how they run their business? I know they provide the systems and all of that, but how much control does the franchisor have for their brand, for their branding?
Every franchise is different when it comes to how much control they exercise. Some brands force you to use a marketing fund that every single franchise brand has. Others are less stringent, right? I mean, you can't go into McDonald's and start selling gyros and change the golden arches to some other shape, right? So it just all depends.
I see. Now, what are the things that somebody needs to watch out for or make sure they do their research on before purchasing a franchise?
The way you figure that out is by talking to existing franchisees. And look, there are certain brands out there that are very good at selling franchises, but not necessarily good at actually supporting their franchisees.
I
So,
see.
I mean, it's really finding out how from other people that are in the trenches as franchisees, how good of an experience they've had from the franchise brand. And I think many of my candidates tend to underestimate the cultural aspect of franchises, meaning you've got to fit into the culture of the brand. In many ways, it's like a marriage. The other thing I want to say too is that before people invest in something, they really need to be very introspective. The people that I deal with, my candidates, the people that I help, I would say that they really have to have a compelling reason to do this. The one X factor about whether or not things are going to work out or not is the people that are willing to go the extra mile. I even call it like a silver bullet as being themselves. And I know this sounds a little hokey, but it's really, if you're not willing to burn that midnight oil or do a little bit more and talk to that extra person at the franchise brand, or be someone that's just kind of there with the people that are the staff that are consultants inside the franchise brand, ask them for advice or help, then maybe it's not a fit. You've got to be able to do that extra thing in order to be successful, whatever that takes.
I see. Awesome. Now, what is a good way to fund a franchise? So you talked about kind of the misconceptions of things, and you mentioned getting a loan, SBA loan. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because initially, a while ago, but even me personally, I thought, hey, if I'm going to buy a franchise, I need to have that 200, 300, 500K sitting in my bank account, cash, in order for me to buy a franchise. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about creative ways to fund a franchise if you don't have a lot of cash sitting around?
Great question. So look, there's so many different ways to fund it. Let's talk about my favorites. If you don't have cash sitting around, right, you could have friends or family help out. That's a possibility. The other possibility is that a lot of people don't realize that you can take your Amazon or Nvidia stock and go ahead and invest in yourself if it's a 401k or Roth IRA or IRA in general, right? Rollover program.
Oh, I see. And is that different than taking a loan against your retirement funds?
That's different than taking a loan against your portfolio or retirement funds, right? So it's called a ROBS or rollover, and it's something where it's your retirement fund that actually owns the business, which is a really good opportunity for people.
Oh, interesting.
So that's one way. There also is in-house financing from franchise brands sometimes, where they'll, at a reasonable rate, go ahead and finance their franchisees. And look, there are commercial loans, and sometimes there are SBA loans as well. I'm not a huge fan of the SBA. And the reason why is I feel as if the SBA loan it's a recourse loan, meaning if something were to happen, you're still on the hook. And sometimes it's a variable rate, which makes it difficult. If the rates have gone up, then you're on the hook sometimes for variable rates as well. But for some people, that's the only option, and that's great. But I would explore other options before looking at SBA.
Yeah, I feel like the SBA should be the last option, and that's my opinion just from my history. If you can't get approved for any other type of loan, then you go to the SBA and
Yes.
secure your personal assets.
Yep.
All right, awesome. Now let's go back to picking your brain a little bit about the book. So we talked about debunking, the 5 things that people need to know. Is there any other takeaways, key takeaways that you wish to share with our audience?
So the book has specific instances of franchisees that have been able to create a lifestyle for themselves. And so the reason why I called it the franchisee lifestyle is I think that what most people want is they want freedom. And when I mean freedom, I'm not talking about not working at all, but I'm talking about working on their own terms. I'm talking about if I want to work at 11 p.m. at night, I'm going to do it. If I want to go to my kid's soccer game or softball game, I'm able to do that as well. That's what freedom means.
My favorite part of being an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And so it talks about real examples with real franchisees that have attained that level.
Wonderful. All right. So take us back to a challenge. So what was your biggest challenge in business or in life, and what did you do to overcome it? Make us cry a little bit. We love challenges because we all face them, and that's the time where we need to make decisions. So I love to hear what you have to say from your history.
So Yegi, I mean, the thing that really comes to mind was totally outside of my control. My wife at 23 weeks had a premature rupture membrane right when I started my business. And actually,
Wow.
this happened at 17 weeks, right? So she was on bed rest for 6 weeks from 17 to 23. And my oldest son only made it for 3 hours. And my second oldest daughter only made it for 30 days, right? So
Wow.
what I can say is that dealing with a situation like that, when I'm starting my business, was something that was very painful and very hard at that time. But
Oh,
if
I
I
can
look at
only
it,
imagine.
but if I look at that situation, I see myself as being blessed because what my son and daughter taught me is they taught me the value of love and the value of having someone like that in your family. And to be able to, and my wife and I are blessed now with having three daughters that are healthy that we have. And my daughters just turned 13 and 7. And also have a 9-year-old, but just having that experience when starting a business as well was really, really taught me the value of how precious life is and not to take anything for granted.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Honestly, it gave me goosebumps, and I could only imagine how difficult that was. I had a huge scare that was similar. I had to be on bed rest. Thank God, it worked out at the end, but I could only imagine. Like we were literally counting days and living day by day to see if this baby's gonna be okay. So, congratulations on getting through the challenges of life and having three healthy kids.
I'm so grateful that it worked out for you.
Thank you so much. All right, so let's get back to our closing questions. Now, if we were to ask you this question today or 10 years ago, how would it be different? So the question is, what does a happy and fulfilled life look like to you today, and how did it look like 10 years ago?
That's an easy one, right? Because, and let's kind of
Isn't
say
it? I mean,
13
if
years
you've been
ago.
taking your time and think you've thought about it. Some people, they have no idea how to answer that question. They're like, I don't know.
Let's say 14 years ago before my kids, right? I mean, because I think that one of the most amazing times of anyone's life is when their child is born and healthy, right? Like my oldest daughter. The fact that, so let's talk about me 10 years ago or 14 years ago or 13 years and 5 days ago. Just a different existence, right? It's just a much more fulfilling life now where you have your family and you have your kids and you're traveling, and it's just really, really rewarding and amazing to be a dad. That's my favorite thing of my life right now.
I love it. And how was it different back then when you didn't have kids? Your
I
priorities, or what did life look like to you for it to be perfect then?
It wasn't as fulfilling, right? Looking back on it, right? It was okay. It was nice. I mean, it was very focused on myself and my wife. Maybe some running on a weekend, or maybe a nice restaurant or something like that, but just not as
Different.
different and really not as rewarding. I mean, it's funny. I was at my daughter's softball game last night, and I'm a softball dad. Two of my three play, and my friend's like, I think you really like these things. I'm like, yes, you better believe it. It's better than a Dodgers game or whatever. Just so much fun. Love it.
I love it. It is rewarding. We're still at the newborn stage, my husband and I, so I don't know if he would answer this question the same as you do. We're still having the challenges of newborn stage, but that's wonderful. I'm sure as they get older, you could see a lot more reward on the hard work that you put in to create these little humans. Awesome. Now we are getting close to our finishing. Now, if somebody wanted to contact you or reach out to you, how can they find you? Where can they find you?
So look, I promise to tell anyone if they're fit or not for franchising, right? The best way is to go to franchiseadam.com and book a free 15-minute chat, and I'll tell you if I think you're a fit or not for next steps. It's a free service.
Okay, so since you mentioned that, I'm gonna ask you one bonus question. So, who is the right who? Sorry, let me do that again. Since you did bring that up, can you tell us who is the right fit to own a franchise as far as business skills go?
So it's anyone with, I'm going to cast a wide net, anyone with any sort of business skills, right? If you've never had any business training or even any interest in business, if you're an art student or an art student now and you don't like capitalism or business, you're probably not a fit, right? But if you, it could be anything from HR to sales, business development, or operations, whatever that might be, some sort of business acumen and a desire to change your life.
Awesome.
I've had people as young as 25 invest in franchises and people as old as 72 invest.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you again, Adam, for your time, your advice, and all your wisdom. Until next time, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We'll link all the information below so you can find Adam if you are looking to invest in a franchise. But until next time, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please rate and review this podcast. Follow and engage with us on social media under the Yegi Project. And if you're interested in being a guest, email info@theyegiproject.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.